Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to this panel discussion titled Reskilling for Resilience, How to Prepare the Workforce for AI Disruption. My name is Shivangi Jain. I'm a Senior Manager and Global Economic Modeling Lead at Economist Impact, and I'm really happy to be here with my panel to be moderating this discussion today. Now, as we see AI technologies making significant strides, businesses are presented with both incredible opportunities, but equally with pressing challenges. AI has the potential to drive efficiency, growth, innovation, but at the same time, it also drives a lot of uncertainty for businesses, particularly in terms of how jobs and roles will evolve. It's no longer about how is AI disrupting the workforce, or is it disrupting the workforce even, but how are businesses going to respond to that, and how are they going to provide their teams with the skills that they need to remain resilient in this environment. So I'd like to first start off by introducing my fantastic panel, who bring a huge amount of expertise and will share their insights and practical examples for how businesses can go about reskilling. So if I could just start off by asking each one of you to quickly introduce yourselves, tell us who you are and where you're from.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Christina Yan Zhang, CEO of the Multiverse Institute. Nice to meet you all.
Hi, everybody. Claire Davenport. I'm COO at Multiverse.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Bastien, and I work for Rekit, which is a company having brands like Nurofen, Durex, Vanish in health and hygiene. And I look after our AI and Gen AI enterprise initiative.
And we actually have a fourth panelist online joining us on Zoom, Isabel. I'm not sure if you can also
I can hear and see you just perfectly. Thank you. I'm Isabel, a professor of strategy and organization at Technical University of Munich.
Perfect. Thank you, Isabel, and thank you for joining us virtually today. It's lovely to have you, and lovely to have all of you as well. Thank you for being here. So I think we can dive right in. And to begin with, I think the first question when we're thinking about reskilling is, what do we actually mean by reskilling? What kinds of skills are we talking about? And maybe if I could come to you first, Bastien, just to provide that industry perspective.
Sure. So I'll talk with our example. We've been on this journey at Rekit for a year and a half now. This journey of AI and Gen AI, because we say AI, but actually we talk a lot because Gen AI came, but AI machine learning has been here for a while. And so if we talk about how it's impacting the workforce, our journey, again, very personal for Rekit, has been around practical AI around the humans in a function per function approach. We've started in marketing. We're going after other functions now. I think it's good context to talk about how we think about upskilling and reskilling, right? And so the way we're seeing that is that you've got actually two aspects, right? When we talk about skills for AI, you get the real technical skills that we need to acquire as a company. So you talk about data scientists, AI engineers, and a lot of skill sets here. And then you got the actual reskilling of entire functions. And I think this is what got really interesting for us, which is how do you look about the new competencies that it requires in a function like marketing, in a function like supply, in a function like R&D. How do you modify career path for it as well? And of course, how do we approach a workforce that suddenly has access to years or tens of years of knowledge and experiences because it's already into an engine that they have access to? So when we think of reskilling and upskilling, we're working across those three things.
Perfect. And so just building a little bit on what you just said, a big part of it is really trying to identify what those skills are, right? And that will look very different for different businesses and in different industries. Maybe, Isabel, actually, if I could come to you next online.
Sure.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how businesses actually go about doing that? How do they identify what is needed in their context?
I mean, there was a survey of business leaders in USA, Germany, Finland, India on what are the skills of the future in an AI age. And interestingly, these experts said, well, anything related to social interpersonal skills will become much more important. And I share that sentiment. Also giving strategic vision, making probably ethical decisions as to, which are the things you could do with AI, and you can do a lot that would be potentially useful for an organization, but which of those do we actually want to do? Are we the kind of organization that taps into the voices of its employees or its customers, which certainly contain interesting information, but it's an ethical violation potentially. So all of that becomes more important and less important foreign language skills, because now we have direct translation. And very interestingly for me, these experts said, well, oral communication will become much more important, but written communication will become much less important. And they don't give an explanation, but there's an experiment that has sent emails that leaders have written to the leaders without any AI changes. And then another part of the leaders has received their own email, but sort of rephrased, reworded by AI. And the leaders liked the AI message, their own message, changed by AI much better. And the employees who also, got to see both versions of the email, they also preferred a lot the message that the AI has rewritten. And I know a leader who says, well, of course, I used to say, don't write emails when you're angry, wait a few days, sleep on it. But now, I write my emails angry, but I paste them into ChatGPT. ChatGPT makes them friendly and I can send it right away. We've become much faster.
That's a really interesting point as well. And you touch upon something actually I was going to bring up a little bit later on, but we can talk about now that you brought it up. But maybe if I could come to you actually, Claire. When we think about skills and AI, how do we balance the need for sort of technical skills with some of these more softer skills that Isabel is talking about? Where do we draw that balance?
Yeah, so our three most popular courses so Multiverse does a lot of AI and data upskilling, reskilling, and the sort of the three areas that our courses tend to concentrate on, which is these training, is just productivity, personal productivity for people to use the tools and know how the use cases are. B, one which is more the people in the company that are looking to apply that for business value. So how does it fit with your business processes? Looking at a more kind of systems level, if you like, going into whole teams and sort of saying, like, where can we get the value? And then how do you upskill your managers and leaders? Because if you have sort of managers and leaders that are not sort of AI competent or AI confident, let's say, then it's unlikely that they're going to have their teams as AI enabled as a more AI confident leader. So we spend time on sort of confidence and like on the job training, so people can immediately apply what they're learning and so on. But I think it's important to think about sort of those three sort of buckets, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that you've touched upon training as well, I guess thinking about how do businesses actually go about reskilling, upskilling their workforce, training obviously plays a big role in that. Can you talk to me a little bit about what does that training look like? And is it just about providing people with the tools and training them in those tools? Or what else do we need to provide them with to be successful with AI?
Is that to me?
Yes, if you
could. Yeah, I mean, you can just give out a whole load of Copilot licenses, obviously, and there's some training that comes with that that Microsoft provides. But what we found, we did a case study recently where the customer wanted to see if it made a difference. So we had a control group, we had half of the people just using the sort of the Copilot and the licenses and the training that they already had, and then the other half using upskilling, coaching and so on as well, and using our platform. The main thing was that the non-control group, the experimental group, had 3 times as much engagement and 3 times as much usage of the Copilot licenses, which is significant. But also, that meant that they saved more time. So a lot of people look at ROI in terms of time saved. They saved about a week, a quarter more than the control group. But then I think the thing that was fascinating was, and we're just sort of, they've been doing it for about 3 months so far, 3 or 4 months, is it's harder problems that that group is then solving. They get more confident, and then they're actually using it to solve for harder things. And if you believe all the stats from Harvard and BCG and various research pieces that come out about this, that is a common phenomenon. You get you're more likely to get a very high value solution using AI, so people do see more value add from it. So I think it's not just the more usage and the more time saved. It's what that actually then translates into in terms of what people are using AI for.
That's really interesting, because it sounds like it's not just using AI to make people more efficient, but there are actual real business benefits of using it. You can identify more value in business cases and use cases. Christina, maybe coming to you, could you talk to us a little bit about how that, clearly to me, it seems like it's not just about AI for training people in AI for the sake of it. It's about building it into your wider sort of business strategy. Could you talk a little bit about that and how organizations need to shift their thinking in using AI?
Thank you. I want to put the things in perspective. So I'm currently leading a project at the United Nations through International Telecommunication Union, which is ICT agent for the UN, setting up lots of different standards for frontier technology. So we are looking at how to use AI to create people-centered digital future within the wider smart city environment. And this initiative is now receiving backing up from 18 different UN agencies, including UNESCO, UNICEF, World Bank, who are all very much care about the future of education at large. I guess the key issues every single one of us need to think very deeply now is, with the rise of AI, especially lots of tech leaders such as Sam Altman, Jin-Seng Huang talking about the arrival of artificial general intelligence, which they predict is potentially going to be smarter than many of us who are sitting here today. So what that means to the wider societal impact in the years to come, and also what kind of skills and education our children, ourselves, should be receiving so that we still stay relevant, is a major issue. I want to draw your attention a little bit forward. In June last year, Elon Musk said at the annual meeting of Tesla that he predicted that by 2050, when the global population reached 10 billion people, he thinks there will be between 1 to 3 humanoid robots living, working, and studying alongside us. So we're talking about potentially up to 30 billion humanoid robots living with 10 billion people on a daily basis. What that means to our society, and what kind of jobs they should be doing, and what kind of jobs we should be doing, there is a lot of big discussion we all need to thinking about. And personally, I think if we're looking that forward, maybe one of key skills to be added to the wonderful work you guys are doing is perhaps we should start to teach, like our kids, ourselves, our boss, how to, live in harmony with our robotic friends, because they are going to be our colleagues, our family members, and our companions on a daily basis. And those kind of issues need to be addressed. Another really important thing is we shouldn't forget, when we're progressing all this amazing discussion about AI and all kinds of different frontier technology, 1/3 of the global population, 2.6 billion people, are still not connected to the internet. So when we progress different frontier technology, how can we ensure no one is left behind? The UN said, based on the current progress, it will take another 300 years for women to achieve gender equalities in our world. And how can we ensure more women will take leadership with the rise of AI? Consider there is a lot of bias in the data we got to train different AI models. And also, there is a lot of other issues in terms of low-income communities, right? We need to support them. And people with disabilities, I think there is 1.6 billion. So how can we diversify the personalized learning experience you guys are doing to benefit the wider population? And don't forget, when we're talking about reskilling, often we're focusing on the younger generation, which is our future, but we shouldn't forget about our parents, our grandparents, the aging society. If they don't give birth to every single one of us, we wouldn't exist in the first place, right? But when we're talking about reskills, how can we support our elderly society to also, benefit from this kind of major societal change is crucially important.
Bastian.
I'd love to add one point on this one. And you talked at large of society here, but it's actually true in an enterprise as well. Right? We can't just think of what are the new skills we need to bring in. Actually, when I was talking about reskilling for all across functions and the enterprise, we really need to think hard of how do we upskill and reskill people that are already here. Because for a company like us, it's not about being the best and the latest on AI. It's about understanding it enough so that we apply that to our business. And who is best to apply that to our business are the people that are already in our brands, working on our products, working in research and development. And so for us, it's really the key here. How do we identify the right skills and the new training, new content that is mostly happening on the job, 70% of what we do is on the job, so that the people that we have in our company can actually benefit from what we call the sparring partners coming from AI and Gen AI. I think this is a really key point.
Yeah,
here.
totally true. I mean, I think I haven't actually got the stats, but most of the people on our program are probably in their 30s, 40s, and we are. That's because businesses are upskilling the people they've got that know the business, they know the business processes and so on. I mean, obviously we go across the whole spectrum, but it is definitely not just limited to the sort of the younger generation.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really interesting point all of you raised. And one thing I'm wondering is, what is that balance between sort of on-the-job versus off-the-job training? And where does the responsibility kind of lie? Because we're talking a lot about, at the moment, what businesses can do. But beyond businesses, as you mentioned, Christina, it's a wider societal issue, right? So who are the other players that need to come in? Where do education systems fit in? Where does the role of the government fit in? So what does that look like? Where does that balance lie between on-the-job versus off-the-job?
I think it's really like a balance where everyone needs to get involved. That's why, as part of the exercise, we proposed to the UN to set up a new type of public-private partnership. We call it people-centered. Means we want to ensure the diverse needs of our different population and communities will be best supported with the advancement of a wide range of technology, not only about AI, because we know technology trend moving very fast. Like a few years ago, we were talking about blockchain and then metaverse, and now AI. Maybe next year we're going to talk about quantum technology. The year after, we're going to talk about robotics. I think what really matters is not really try to jump in anything which is trendy at that time, but really looking at the value in terms of return for investment to your business now, because your CFO will always say, what's the outcome if we're going to put exponentially, investment into the space? We need to see the results, so we need to take baby steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Isabel, maybe if I could bring you in here, do you have anything to add on that?
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say I look very much forward to robots in my home that can do the dishes and change the sheets and stuff like that. So I think that would be a really good thing. Thank you for mentioning that, Christina. With regards to education, certainly I personally think that universities who have had the same form in the past hundreds of years, I think they're in for some big changes, because what AI brings to education is something we haven't seen in hundreds of years, real innovation. Now, when I say that, sometimes, in universities, they get, like, why is she saying that? We have been innovative. But what I mean with innovation is, do we learn faster than our parents or grandparents? I would say no. You're not learning stuff faster. One could even argue we become slower. But now with AI, we have the first experiments out that show if you give everyone a personal tutor, an AI tutor that is tailored to what you know, how you learn, what you're interested in, and then trains you specifically, on where you need to be trained, then the time in which you can master a certain subject shortens drastically. So we have innovation now arriving. I think everybody ought to take advantage of that. And you asked about balance between companies and individuals. I think companies would be well advised for seeing the changes that we will be going through. This is a disruptive, new Kondratyev's cycle like electricity. Yeah, that's a good comparison, I think. So, many companies still have training days, like 3 training days per year. And I think they might want to reconsider whether they should abandon that and send the signal to their employees saying, well, if you want to learn a business skill that is going to be useful, there is no limit in, the days you can take to train that. Certainly at some point there has to be a limit, of course, but I mean, as a signal, because in transformation, there's nothing better that can happen to a company than employees that raise their hand and say, I would like to learn this new skill, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Isabel. So I guess we've talked a lot about the potential use cases of AI for teams and sort of the role of training, etc. I'm just wondering what is the barrier? What is stopping businesses from being able to do this? What are some of the challenges that they're facing? And maybe Bastien, coming from a business yourself, maybe you could tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you've seen.
So maybe I'll give a bit more of what we've done in the past year and a half, right? So we've created applications for everyone in marketing and starting in research and development as well. Like I was saying, sparring partners to access insights. So everything that we've done in consumer research that is happening out on the internet to help us informing product ideation, right? So that's one thing. We've also provided a sparring partner to the everyday brands and marketers, marketing people to actually remove all of the burdensome tasks so that they can focus on higher value activities. So we heard that previously in the first panel this morning. And so when doing this, and we've deployed that to about 350 people right now, so when doing this, I think the couple of challenges we faced were on training itself, I would say, and maybe I'm going to be a bit provocative on this one, I don't believe we faced so far an issue of people onboarding onto that journey and having the willingness and the eagerness to train. And most of that has happened on the job. And the reason for that is that because we've created application for their current jobs, right? So if you're working in marketing and I give you a sparring partner to do your job better, you understand what AI is doing for you. It's probably easier than just jumping into a very generic copilot and just trying to figure out from prompt engineering to making sure that the output has no hallucinations and things like that, because we've been holding their hand across that process. I think the change is really happening that we see, and that is very, again, like really the change that we need to manage in our community is that if I take the insights engine that we've created, it gets you a product concept in a few days, where usually it was taking a few weeks, right? And I think that change is the illustration of the access to knowledge, the access to decades of experience that we've had in our company is suddenly immediate. And how to then work into such an environment is very different. In plain English, it means that someone can have access to all of the insights across all of our brands and categories, across the past 25 years of research. And it means that someone that joins our company, initially they would have taken 3-5 years to learn the job. Actually, they need to learn the job with that experience already available to them. So it's completely different, and I think that's the challenge here, because it's really raising the floor for everyone, and therefore it accelerates the learning path for them as well. Yeah. I wanted to finish on one point, which is, I think you mentioned on the change of the skills that are required. I was reading through the WEF Future of Jobs report, which is fantastic, and actually it's very interesting to see that the top 2 skills now are learning agility, resilience, flexibility, and adaptability, right? Actually, when we think about reskilling, upskilling in AI, we think technical skills. AI and data was 11, and then programming was below, right? Doesn't mean it's not important, because there's still the people who are creating the applications. But when you think of reskilling and upskilling for the thousands of employees that we have, it's more around how do we push them on the job to have that learning agility.
That's really interesting. Claire, maybe if I could come to you to build on that, because you obviously have an outside-in sort of perspective on businesses. Is that something you're seeing as well in the way you're training teams?
Yeah, this is interesting for me because I'm responsible for AI enablement internally for our company, as well as being on the exec team of what we do for customers, and having the coaches and deployment under me. The confidence, I think, is really important. It's important to, where I see the biggest barriers, honestly, is like people in my team who they just haven't engaged. If they haven't engaged in that thing, it's too scary. They don't know where to start. There's a little bit of that. There's a bit of psychological safety. Like, if we're bringing in AI tools and so on, does that mean that I'm out of a job in the future? And I think it's really important to make sure that it's communicated that you're enhancing your skills, you're making yourself more employable in the future. You're doing, that's important. And then the sooner you can put the tools into their hands, so they're actually doing something, working, as Bastian says, on a project that they're already doing in their day-to-day job, and they can do it fast, they can do it better, they can get an insight. And then we sort of teach communication skills as well. So we have like a Slack channel where people are, saying their best things that they've invented or they've come up with or they're using it for, using AI for, generative AI for. But then we'll have like an all hands, and then we have kind of people showing their best cases, and it's from people all around the business, and they're quite exciting things to see, and it makes people then think, oh yeah, we could do that, and it feels a bit more like it's a sort of shared thing. So anything you can do to sort of bring that confidence up. There's a little bit of kind of peer pressure that comes from that as well, right? Because it's like, wow, everybody's doing all this great stuff, like it's important to do it in my department as well. So I think there's that, creating that environment where, we're providing you skills and training and so on, and tools, and the confidence that this is good for you and your CV over time and so on, and that kind of inspiration and the kind of, call it peer pressure of like, oh, I'm going to miss the boat here. So I think whatever it takes, different things for different people.
I like that, a little bit of healthy competition amongst teams. Christina, maybe if I could come to you next. Bastien and Claire have talked a little bit about some of the internal challenges that businesses are facing, some of the internal barriers. What about externally? Is there anything sort of in the wider policy environment that could help enable businesses to better reskill their employees?
Go back to your point about confidence. I think it's crucially important at this moment, because if you're looking at the general public opinion when it comes to AI adoption, the biggest, keywords coming up is perhaps fear, because people don't want to be replaced. But if you're looking back history, we've already been through at least, 3 or 4 different industrial revolutions already, right? And every time when technology is driving for major societal change, there will be a portion of the population feel worried about their future. So I want to quote Franklin Roosevelt. He said at the Great Depression, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." And if we start to build confidence within our individual organizations to provide people with more opportunities for on-job training, like the wonderful job Multiverse you guys are doing, as well as at the same time actively looking at what kind of new jobs, new industries, and new employment will be created as a result of the advancements of a great variety of different technologies, and present that kind of new employment opportunities to our employee, to our colleagues, to our children, to give them the confidence, the hope that they can look up to. And then I think gradually it will make this transition to have more of this AI-driven adoption with faster and also more positive impacts. I think that probably is the key.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That positive impact is really important. It's lovely when people, the case studies are great when you've got them, whether it's not just about time saved, it's like, we've done this for the customer, or we've done, as I say, it's not just time saved. There's some great case studies. There's a retailer that we work with that has got people on this training program, and they've reduced email delivery time by 60% because of something they did in marketing, like personalizing it, or they've there's a fun example of somebody, I think they're a space strategist. I'm not quite sure what that is. That's what I have to ask you. But they work out within their stores where things are, and they've saved like £2.4 million annually across these stores by working out with AI kind of where things are in the store and like how they can set that's a saving to a labour cost. So then when they use these case studies with their managers or whatever and tell the rest of the company about them, they feel great. It's a great thing to be able to say that they've done, as well as having created the value. And I think that we need to give those to people.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not just training people for the sake of training them, but there are actual business level implications and benefits, and thinking about that as in its entirety and planning for that is probably the way to go.
Yeah.
We have just a couple of minutes left. I wanted to just open up to the audience to see if anyone had any questions for our panelists. Yes, you've got one up front. We've got a mic.
Yeah. So I'm Sophia Matveyeva. I run a training company called Tech for Non-Techies, and I am curious about training budgets and what you are seeing, because obviously the UK economy has had some issues lately, and so during that, some organisations want to reduce training budgets. Other organisations actually think, well, if we invest in AI, we will cut costs in another way. So what are you seeing? And what are you doing at Reckitt?
I can give you a short answer to start if you want. We don't reduce training budget because we know that there's many skills, whether it's a technical skill or soft skills, like I was saying, right? And we do that on the job. So we do that through the investment we're making in actually delivering those solutions to our people. So actually, when it comes to AI and Gen AI together, or AI at large, we're actually investing to make sure that we equip as many employees as we can to be ready with those solutions, because it's part of their future jobs anyway. Those jobs are going to change, and AI is going to be an integral part of those. So we want to make sure that they have the level of understanding that is required for their day-to-day. Doesn't mean we want everyone to be an expert in large language models. It means that we want them to understand the application for their business, and we're investing in that.
And our courses are paid for through the apprenticeship levy, which is there regardless. So we're not particularly impacted by that in the UK. Say in the US, people are. It's very, very important to show the ROI, because then you can afford to invest in the training. So that's one of the reasons that we lean into that so heavily.
I'm going to give you another quote. Nelson Mandela once said, "Education is the most powerful tool we can use to change the world." And maybe in the short term, in certain countries, the budget can be a little bit tight. But fundamentally, if you're looking at global landscape, all countries, in theory, if they want to become world leaders in the years ahead, they will definitely invest heavily into R&D, and education is a key. So I wouldn't worry too much.
I'm not worried. Our biggest clients are actually oil-rich Gulf states, which are transitioning their economies from oil dependency to digital. Obviously, the UK doesn't have the same issues. Doesn't, and also, frankly, it doesn't have the same budgets. So this is why I'm curious about, how companies are thinking about transforming their skill sets here.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you. So, piggybacking a little bit on your question there, I was also wondering what you think is the role of HR and L&D teams or leaders actually in the companies to drive this transformation and support of the teams for the future. Because I often see that it's more the technical teams doing that, but not everywhere. So what are your thoughts on that?
So what was the question? What was the HR team's role?
Yes.
You could do it.
a lot of the business leaders we engage with, they're trying to bring it in for their teams, and then obviously the conversations then with the people team about how to make sure that they balance the learnings across different levels, across different teams, that making sure that it's really fair across the business and they're using it in the best places, and then also internally training their own teams on what because it makes a big difference in a people skills function as well.
It's flashing, so just add in 5 seconds. I don't think it's the responsibility of one team, HR or IT, for instance. And the way we drive is, like I've said, we approach function by function, and there's no better places in marketing to reinvent how marketing should look like. Same for R&D. So of course you will have HR, IT as a cross-functional group here. But if you reinvent the skill set for the marketing of the future or for the supply of the future, it needs to happen within that function. So that's how we drive it.
Perfect. It is flashing, but just before we close, I just want to check if Isabel, you have anything to add on that.
Maybe very briefly, thank you. It's a great question. I mean, OpenAI has announced an AI agent that will cost $20,000 per month. So they must think that it has the value delivered to companies. So we need to think about how it will change learning and development. And what I would recommend to HR is to treat AI agents, and we'll see more of them, just the way you would treat other applicants, human applicants. So you will interview, I guess, a few AI agents. Maybe you'll put them on probation, and then some you will offer a permanent position because they've been found very useful across your organization. And I've seen companies doing that approach. They have them in these buckets as they advance through the application process, and that seems to work really well. I've already seen the AI agent Firecrawl. It's an HR agent, and this agent recruits other agent and has in his in the job ad, please only apply if you are an AI agent, not if you're human. I thought it was interesting to see.
Yeah, just add on that. I know in China, in Shenzhen, which is considered the Silicon Valley in China, now the government actually has started to employ, I think, up to 100 digital AI civil servants to serve the people alongside the human ones. So I guess the future, as I mentioned, will be a beautiful collaboration between our AI fellows and humans, and they do the heavy lifting while we can have a little bit more holidays and less working hours. So everyone will be happy. Job done.
Well, that's a great vision for the future to end on. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are at time, but thank you so much to our panelists for an extremely interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.